Hello, everyone, and welcome to Q&A with Qlik. Today's session is Migrating Qlik Sense Enterprise. Just want to introduce myself. My name's Troy Rainey. I work putting together videos and webinars like this one, and we've got an excellent expert panel for you today. We'll just go around the panel and everyone can quickly introduce themselves. Jan, why don't we start with you?
All right. Hello, everyone. I've been working for Qlik for the last 5 years. One of my main roles is Qlik Sense Client-Managed, and I also work a lot with our cloud customers. So that's basically the last 5 years for me.
Great, thanks. Sebastian?
Hello, my name is Sebastian. I'm a principal technical support engineer here at Qlik, working with Qlik for 4 years now. My main products are Qlik Sense, Qlik View, End Printing, and a little bit of Qlik Alerting.
Awesome. Mike?
Yeah, my name is Mike Dixon. I've been with Qlik for a little over 8 years. Primary focus is Qlik Sense Client-Managed. I'm happy to be here to help everyone out.
Great. And Nick?
Hi, my name is Nick. I'm a technical support engineer with Qlik. I've been with Qlik for a little over 3 years now. I also primarily work with Qlik Sense Client-Managed. I also cover a little bit of Qlik Alerting and End Printing when they pop up.
Awesome. Okay, so if you have any questions, go ahead and submit them in the Q&A tool. We've already gotten a few pre-submitted, so I'll start with those. First question, what is the best practice of Qlik Sense, and what are the key things to take care of while migrating?
Sure. I'll look at this one. Before migrating, you definitely want to ensure you have an existing backup of the environment. This is key whenever doing any type of migration upgrades of your Qlik Sense environment, because if you ever run into problems, and I'm sure most people on this call might have, and that's why you're joining this call, if you ever need to revert back, you have a backup. This includes having a backup of the database, having a backup of your shared folders, any files that have been modified to work with your environment. You want to make sure you have that. When planning to go to another server or environment, you want to make sure, plan ahead of what you're going to and look at all of the documentation that we have. When we have a few different articles that will be available for you. And I'll make sure that those links are available in the chat. In migrating, but you want to plan ahead. You want to plan, what you're going to go to. If you want to go to the new, same migrating from one version to another, the exact same version, or if you want to be migrating from the current version to an upgraded version, or if you're going to be migrating to, say, client managed to the cloud. We have articles on all of this stuff, and we also have the availability with working with professional services and customer success engineers that can help with everyone, step by step on the way. When you do run into problems, just log everything and make sure you reach out to the support team, and we can help you go to the next step if you run into any problems. But yeah, those are some of the just quick best practices.
Great. Thank you so much. And we posted a couple links into the chat for you, and I'll be sharing those links along with a recording of the session as well. That was the most recent Techspert talk where Sebastian actually went through a complete demo of migrating from one environment to another, and also a great article here with lots of information on all those steps. Okay, next question. What are the considerations to take into account when migrating from streams to spaces? I guess we're talking about from client managed to Qlik Cloud.
Let me take that one. So if you migrate from streams to spaces, in most of the cases, you want to have a one-to-one kind of thing. And Troy just opened the perfect link to explain it all. We have on that link, what you just see here, also a mentioning of an app, which you can load in your Qlik Sense on-prem environment to get all your streams. And then you can do a small selection of which stream you want to have in the cloud if you don't want to have all. You would then run a PowerShell script running the Qlik Sense CLI, and it would put up all those spaces for you. And there are a couple of other tools which then would even help with setting up the apps into those spaces which you created. Then you just have to play around with the permissions, because they are not completely one-to-one with security rules on-prem and permissions in the cloud, but we will come to that at a later time.
Great. This is good. And I've shared the link to this as well. Next question. How can we handle custom security rules in the cloud?
Yeah, I can take that. One of the distinctions that's worth noting is that the cloud doesn't have security rules, but we've got permissions and roles which do serve the same purpose. So the concept is very much the same, but the language around it is different. And I'll drop in to the chat a few of our documentation links so that people can review that documentation at their leisure and get a grasp of it. Which is, yeah, here's an excellent example of it that Troy just brought up now.
Great. Just post that in there. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Next question was asking, I think, about our Qlik Cloud environment. Do you have a super reliable file storage system support for your clients? I think that was related to Qlik Cloud, but not sure. Anyone want to address that?
It could be related to both, cloud,
that's true.
On-prem, because, but Qlik does support various file storage systems. You just need to make sure that the chosen system aligns with the client's security and reliability and performance needs. But we, for the most part, we support most systems on that.
Great. All right, next question. How can I ensure that a root admin can find his apps when migrating to a different server or host name? Do we have to assign them to a user common to both environments? And this is related to client managed.
Yeah, so on that one as well, if you're migrating to another environment, you're typically going to be migrating with your database that you have a backup of. Within the database, all of those users already have those roles assigned. And so when you restore your database to the new server or environment, all of those roles will already be in place. So your root admin in your previous environment will still be a root admin in your new environment. All that metadata is stored in the database. All of the assignment of the apps will stay the same. So main thing is to have that backup tar file of the database, which you'll move to the new location. And then it just points to the exact same binary files for your app files, and everything will stay the same as far as who owns the apps, who owns the tasks, with the security rules that are in place. All of that will stay the same. So you won't have to reassign any specific root admin to any users, because it'll already be in place.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, there's maybe one thing to add on. It can always happen, of course, that something is not working as expected. It shouldn't be, of course. When you migrate the database, everything should be equal. But there's an interesting trick or an interesting thing you can do when you do run into problems. There is a security rule that you can make that basically gives you access to everything. So I'll drop that link as well in the chat. So we call it the super admin role. It's basically a custom role that you then make for that user, and then you can make sure that everything is there.
Just be careful with that rule.
Yes.
If you set that rule up, making modifications within the hub and published applications can cause problems. So be very careful with that rule.
Great. Okay, next question. In another call, it was said that collections are more like streams for public access, while spaces are used for users creating their own apps. Could you please elaborate on that, the difference between collections and spaces? Anyone want to comment? I can say that I've done a lot of work in the cloud, and collections are very customizable. You can set them up however you like and apply tags to them even. And uh, when it comes to cloud, you've got three kinds of spaces in analytics. You've got your personal, which is, exactly that, it's personal. There's the shared space, which is very good for development because you get to collaborate and lean on all those features for collaboration, like notes and bookmarks and sharing and things. And the type of space that's really good for users to consume the data if you have the appropriate license is a managed space, and that's pretty much published apps. Uh, but you could set it up if you don't have the license to allow for managed spaces, that you could set it up and create specific collections and just say, this is the collection. And it could be that they're in a shared space, but we're calling it a published area. There's different ways to handle it. It's all very customizable. I don't know. Does anybody want to add something to that?
Yeah, the way I see it, it's a space is just a space, like it's a defined box in which you have a set of applications. Let's say you have a department, a marketing department, they have their applications, but then a collection would be something that spans across different departments. So you can have a customized collection of apps that from different spaces or elements, different elements. There could be QVDs as well, for example, and that is then your customized package of everything you have in your entry or your user on the tenant.
That's a good point. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Can we ensure certain levels of data security within our cloud environment when moving from client managed, for example, FedRAMP secure?
Yes, we can. So we do have a government cloud in the US, which is compliant with FedRAMP, StateRAMP, and other things. I will put the link here in the chat. And we have achieved this certification, at least for FedRAMP, in 2022. A couple of others came then a little bit later, but it's definitely possible to get this kind of security into your system when moving to the cloud.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, next question. For migrating Qlik Sense from Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows to cloud, is there a list of features or known issues published that shows what needs to be changed for the UI on the UI side for visualizations? I guess it depends on what version you're migrating from.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with it. If you're migrating from the latest version of Qlik Sense, that's going to mirror pretty much what we have within the Qlik Sense Cloud. But if you're migrating from a very old version of Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows to cloud, there will be some differences. You'll just need to look through our release notes on the newer versions to see what kind of differences there are, I guess.
Yeah. And if it helps to make that a smoother transition for your users, maybe it's good to upgrade to the latest version or a newer release first so they get used to that.
Before migrating to cloud, yeah.
Yes. And you just mentioned you were on February 2022, so then it's definitely worth to explore February 2024 before doing that move. Otherwise, it might definitely look different.
But there are a lot of great features with cloud that you should definitely check out. Okay, next question. I want to create a stream accessible to only a few root content admins, hidden from others. Is that possible? And what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, that's actually very possible if we're talking the client managed. Every time you create a stream, you're going to create a new custom rule for that stream giving access. So if you wanted to, you could tie that to specific users and just say, with user ID XYZ, they have access. And you can also do things like hide hidden streams, where if users don't have access to apps or things like that, it should be hidden. But generally, the streams are access granted, based on whatever rules you set at the time, and those are adjustable after the fact as well.
Great. Okay, next question. For client managed, we need to migrate from old server to new servers. Currently, we are a single node system and want to migrate to a multi-node system. What is the recommended architecture for the multi-node setup? Also, how should the file share and repository database be configured? So there's a lot to unpack there, but
so taking a few things. The first things first, if you want to go to multi-node, the first step is just do a single node migration and make sure everything's up and running before you do multi-node. As far as what architecture is going to be right for you, part of that's going to be dependent upon what your demands are and what you need. If for an individual, I would suggest contacting your account manager and work with them to figure out a system that works best for you. But having again, if we're talking in the realm of client managed, having two standalone databases so that you've got redundancy there and you can have a high availability is good. Having your central and then just a failover central, which really doesn't do anything, again gives you high availability. And then beyond that, it's determining, do you need dedicated proxies? Do you need just proxy, engine nodes? Do you need dedicated schedulers? And again, all of that's sort of dependent upon how big your system is and how much, do you need one box to just do solely a task, or do you need fewer resources that, your need for your overhead, and can they just pull double duty or triple duty?
Yeah, the keyword architecture made me think of this section in Qlik Help.
That's a very good, helpful, because you typically want like a one node for users to consume the applications and one node for all of the reloads to be occurring on. You don't want to have resource contention when you're trying to do a lot of reloads and users accessing those applications. So it all depends on how big you're planning on growing the environment too, and working with the account, like Nick said, working with the account manager, working with an architect, technical architect, to see what you're trying to go to so set you up for success.
Great, thank you guys.
And there's generally like the maximum that we support, or that is officially supported, at least, is 12 nodes.
Okay.
And a separate database node if needed.
But again, if you run into any limitations, just reach out to your account manager. We've found ways to solve every problem pretty much. Okay, next question. How do we implement QDF structure from on-prem to Qlik Sense S? Okay.
So let me take this one. It was for a long time not really possible to do that because there was no QDF framework for the cloud. However, it has been developed in the meantime. So there's an alpha and beta version out, which you can see on GitHub. If you open the other link, Troy, you see a little bit more overview things on that one.
Oh, nice.
So Magnus, our chief architect, has written some documentation together on how he's thinking about this. And if you have some additional questions, just reach out to him here on the community page, and he will be happy to address those questions.
Looks great. Thank you for finding that so quickly. Okay, next question was a follow-up to a previous one, but the root admin would be able to add themselves back into the stream if they wanted to, correct?
Yes. By definition, a root admin is sort of assumed to be your system admin for your Qlik Sense deployment. They're going to have enough rights to do that. If your want or your what you're looking for is to have people that can't add themselves in, you can create a custom role that has 90% of a root admin's abilities, but doesn't have the ability to modify streams or create, security rules, but has access to, again, whatever else you need them to do. So that individual would be limited to whatever access you have, even if that's a greater amount of access than your general day-to-day users. But by default, a root admin would have the ability to add themselves to a stream.
Great, thanks. These are great questions. Keep them coming. Next question. What is the best or recommended method for migrating individual client-managed apps to SaaS? Is there documentation for migrating apps to the Qlik Cloud?
Yeah, there certainly is. So here's one idea which we have on the help side. That is how you would distribute them from Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows. You would put up a cloud deployment, given that you have an SLK, which allows you to distribute to the cloud.
Signed license key, yeah.
And then you can pin certain apps which you want to have in the cloud, and certain apps you can leave out. So you can select which ones you want and not. And again, if you need more detailed information, we can provide you some links after that panel time. But there is definitely more documentation out there. So that is one way. There are definitely also other ways of doing it, but this would be my preferred way.
Great. Okay, next question. How do we go about using the GeoAnalytics server when migrating Qlik Sense from client-managed to cloud? I'm not that familiar with the GeoAnalytics server because I feel like a lot of those features have been just included into the product, but someone want to help me out with that?
Yeah, so same thing. This is one of those ones I'm not an expert in, so someone else on the panel will please correct me if I'm wrong. But from the looks of it, this is most of the functionality from GeoAnalytics has been integrated to cloud offerings, and one of the offerings is Geo Operations Analytics. So it's again a different name, but serves primarily the same functions that GeoAnalytics did in client managed.
Yeah, I feel like our R&D team has worked very hard to integrate all of those features into the product. So they're all built in now, but can be a little bit confusing if you're working on the architecture side to figure out exactly how it all works. But try testing it out and see if it works for you. Next question. Will it be possible in Qlik Automation to send a tabular report by mail in XLSX format? So the imprinting functionality, but using Qlik Automation. And I know that's a relatively new feature, but I believe that it is. I don't have a tenant open right now, but I think there's actually a template for that. Has anybody tried that one out?
I have not yet.
Are you guys furiously Googling?
Logging into the tenant as we speak. No,
cool.
But let's put this one on hold. We will take it back and let's just move to the next one until
sure. Next question. I'm migrating Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows from one server to another tonight. Okay, this is good timing for you. Same version on both. Good. Do I need to back up anything else other than app repository and PostgreSQL database? Do I need certificates or anything else? I might have covered this with links, but
I would like to give particular attention to the certificates for a very important reason, actually, especially if there is a host name. Well, you can recycle the certificates onto the new machine, but if there's a change of host name, it's also very important. Just keep in mind that the certificate, the root certificate, will, based on the certificate, the passwords are encrypted for all the connections, all the data connections. So if you have a different certificate from the install, then they won't work anymore after the migration. So yes, do keep in mind your certificates, and then the database and the file share, of course, are the most important things.
But again, in case you missed it, there is a great demo that Sebastian went through, and he went through all those steps and outlined the documentation and the important things there, especially the certificates, and even demonstrated how to troubleshoot some issues if you happen to run into them. So definitely check that out. Next question, follow-up to the previous, just to confirm, you recommended to do the single node to single node migration first, and then talk to an account manager about expanding to multi-node architecture. Was that correct? I believe that's what was said.
That's what I had suggested. You want to go from single to single first, just because that mimics what you're doing. When you're doing the migrations, even if your plan is to upgrade or go to multi-node, the suggestion is always migrate from like to like, and then make whatever adjustments you plan to afterwards. And the discussion for talking to your account manager is just determining scaling. So when your questions were about specific architecture suggestions, without any real information about your system, I couldn't give you specific advice about what you do and don't need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Next question. I read that distributed apps don't work with tabular reporting. Do they work on reporting services reports? All right, distributed apps. So I guess we're talking
from client to
yeah.
There are some limitations, yeah.
I'm not that familiar with all the limitations. Unfortunately, do we have any imprinting experts with us today? I neglected to fill a panel with an imprinting guy, but
So one thing for the old question we had, it's definitely not possible yet to export it as an Excel format. So you can have an Excel format as a list for the recipients and selections you want to have to send it out. On the second question with the distributed apps, I'm just going through the limitations one, so we can see if it would come up there. Otherwise, it might already work.
All right.
So, and it still says tabular reporting is not available for apps published or distributed from client-managed, including multi-cloud deployments. To use tabular reporting with these apps, migrate the apps to Qlik Cloud, use the migration tool, see the setup. That was the old link which we sent already, and then manually export them and re-import them to the cloud.
So it sounds like it's a bit of a process, but it does work with Qlik Cloud, the reporting services reports, is what you're saying.
Yeah, if you do some in-between steps.
Yeah, the migrating of your old reports is always a trick.
And you can see it in the limitations.
All right, I will copy this link, limitations. Here we go. I'll post this link to everybody. Great, thank you for digging that up. Okay, I'm going to jump back to a couple of the questions that were pre-submitted. How can we migrate SAP Report connector to Qlik Cloud? Is it even possible? Oh, I don't know if we have any. Do you guys know that was much more of a data integrations question?
Yeah, I'm not sure about data integrations, but as far as like client, connectors to the cloud, we still have the data gateway, so for ODBC connectors or native connectors that aren't yet available on cloud, you've got a client managed setup that has those connectors, a server setup with gateway, and then the cloud environment will have access to that data. I think that's the current workaround for
And
things which cloud does not support.
You have two other connectors, the SAP BW connector and the SAP SQL connector, which are existing in the standard options to choose from the connector list, given that you have a license in the subsite to use them.
Thank you. I was thinking that there were a couple of SAP connectors built into Qlik Cloud. But as far as if those can connect to SAP reports, I'm not confident on. I'm not sure. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. And one just came in. Let's see. Can you clarify on using third-party apps like Vizlib or Mail and Deploy with Qlik Cloud? Does Qlik Cloud support running these third-party apps? On Client-Managed, we have separate servers running those apps that connect in Qlik Sense. Yeah,
So
when it comes,
Yeah.
go for it.
Oh no. Yeah. As far as I'm aware, there's going to be no way to integrate Vizlib or a third party, utility that connects with Qlik Sense. For the same reason you outlined, you've got a separate server that connects and runs this side by side, with a SaaS solution. The hardware and the servers are on our side. I'm not. Now, again, someone might correct me, but I'm not aware of any way of integrating Vizlib into our current cloud SaaS solutions.
That's where you're wrong, Nick. So it is possible. You have to
I'm
talk
happy to be wrong.
because they do have an online version of their extensions, which you then would link in via your QMC, and then you can use Vizlib extensions in our cloud as well. They are also supported by Vizlib, so if you would have any issues, it would reach out to them first. And then you take it from there. But talk to Vizlib, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I actually assisted a customer quite some time ago, but with a significant thing there is most of their extensions were effectively available, but they are a different package. So it's not that you can use the same package again. So there's a specific version of the same extension then for the cloud, and you have to install them one by one. You cannot just take you cannot migrate. There's no way to migrate them.
Jan, Sebastian, thank you for teaching me on that one.
That's great. Next question. Will Qlik Alerting be getting a newer version?
Short answer here is yes. Exactly, I can say, but they are definitely developing it still, so there will be a new version coming out.
Great.
I just pasted a link in the chat regarding a video using third-party visualization extensions inside of Qlik Cloud. It's part of our Qlik Help YouTube videos.
That's fantastic. Let's just share that. Great. Okay, next question. Regarding Client Managed, I'm migrating a server to an Azure VM using Entra ID for single sign-on. From the SAML token, I get my users' AD group IDs. Is there a way I can retrieve the AD group names instead or in addition to the IDs? It's very specific, but
It's a very specific question, yes.
So most likely, yes, depending on how you would change your answer file, whatever you elements you need. But for this specific use cases, we usually would advise you to talk to our professional services guys to get some deeper insights on how this is possible. It is definitely possible, so to say, but the exact setup might differ from your environment to whatever we have set up in our end. So it depends on how you have put it in the first place, and then you have to go through your XML files and change a few identities. That's it.
Okay, thanks. All right, next question. Do you have any documentation on Qlik Sense integration with Smartsheet? how does that work one way or both way from data writing and pulling point of view? I do have API token from Smartsheet. I'm not familiar with that. Do you guys know?
I have not worked with Smartsheet myself. I'm assuming that's like a data connector.
So we do have a couple of community articles, which says we have got it to work, but it's limited to 10,000 rows only. We do have on the smart sheet side a Qlik feature run through. Let me just pull it up. Might be something you already know, but it wouldn't hurt to dig deeper in the community if you have a specific question to it, and then maybe those colleagues can answer.
Okay.
And here was also one with the Smartsheet REST connector, which might help to solve something. That's an older post, but it might still work in that way.
I feel like I see Aki responding on those posts, so that's a good source there. Great. Next question. Are you able to add possibility to share automation between users, publish or something? To share an automation. Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and that would be definitely a great feature request, because as of now, it's not really possible. You could only export the automation, and then the other user would import the same automation again, and he would get it in his space, but you wouldn't see all the automations.
And if you guys aren't familiar with Qlik Ideation, it's a section on Qlik Community. I believe it's under Discover, no, Support, Ideation. And here's where people like yourselves can recommend feature requests or improvements. And you can see the other submissions that someone else has come up with, and you can vote for which ones you like. And our product management teams weigh this very heavily when it comes time to making improvements. So please check it out. And that is a great idea. Next question. In addition to automations, is there any other way to chain, reload, or tasks for several QVFs in Qlik Cloud?
There are different ways. That's definitive, but it's very, very custom. There are several methods. Again, this for this I would also recommend to talk to someone in professional services or consulting, because it's extremely custom and it depends really on the current architecture or where the data is coming from as well.
Okay. Next question. Are there any concerns with upgrading from May 2023 with patch 13 to the latest version, February 2024? Any blockers or limitations we should take care of?
Can you say those numbers again, just to be
Yeah,
sure?
going from May 2023 to February 2024. So less than a year.
There shouldn't be. No, there isn't any. We had a few years ago, we had a point where there were specific changes needed, but in theory, this should be a needless change.
Yeah, the only thing you should do here is to deinstall the patch first. So you go deinstalling patch 13 first, and then upgrade. Then you have much less problems than going with patch 13 to February 2024.
And Sebastian, correct me if I'm wrong, did May 2023 come out with, was that still on 12.5 database, or did that have the 14.8?
That is still on the 12.5 database, correct? So
yes, which is supported by the latest version, but if they wanted to also upgrade their Postgres database from the older version to the newer version, that would be an option as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that's recommended if you're still running 12.5, right?
Yep.
I'll just post this link as well because this is information about how to do that. There's a great tool called QPI, the people who have used it in the past, the Postgres installer that makes that a little bit easier for you. Next question. How can we get a license to test out the new environment before moving production to it? It's a good question.
I think the easiest way is to talk to your account manager and to ask for a test license, and they will usually provide you with one.
It's usually like a 30-day month trial, which will, expire, and it's limited on how many users can access the applications or professional analyzer and whatnot, but it's just for testing purposes. But yeah, the account manager will be able to provide that to you.
Great. And question just came in. Is the client managed installation still limited to 12 nodes?
That's
Yes.
still a standing limitation for the moment.
That doesn't mean that there aren't any customers that have. There are definitely customers who have more, but it becomes harder for us to support that in the sense for scalability reasons, and that's why we set the limit to 12 basically. But yes, it's still there.
Great.
The main reason is that this is the maximum amount of numbers what we test. Beyond that, we haven't tested it.
It's good to understand that as well. That's why those limitations are there, because they have been tested, but perhaps it's possible. Next question. We're having trouble with the Bootstrap command. It stops at entering main startup phase. Any suggestions?
Yeah. So if you would stop there at this stage, it's usually because you have the service dispatcher either not running, so that the license service can't communicate with the repository at this time, or it is running, but whatever microservice is needed for that specific startup process is not responding to the requests. So the easiest fix usually here is to check if the license service is up and running on port 9200. And if you don't understand why the repository is not going all the way through, you can go to see program data, Qlik Sense log, repository trace, and then you open the system log, scroll down to the end, and the last line will reveal why it doesn't start up. I can put the path into the chat as well, so you have it easier to remember.
Sure. But I brought this up just because Sebastian does demo that in this video. He goes through the log files a bit. Okay, a few more questions here. We're running May 2022, so a couple years old. What's the best upgrade path to run the latest? Mike, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So this one, similar to one of the first questions that were asked, make sure you have a backup of the current environment. And best practice is to, if you're able to, have a separate environment before upgrading your production environment, like a QA or dev environment to test on. That'd be great. That's the best practice. But one of the things that you're going to be wanting to do going from May 2022 is upgrading the database as well from potentially 9.6, which is no longer supported. But if you installed May 2022 at that version, then it might already be on 12.5, which you can, as we've already provided the link, using the QPI tool to upgrade from 9.6 or 12.5 to the latest database version is going to help out a lot. Get the database upgraded, then work on after everything is backed up and the database is upgraded, then you can follow the instructions and work on upgrading the Qlik Sense environment as well to the latest version.
Great. And there is a video demonstration of this as well down at the bottom. So it's good to check that out when it comes time to upgrade. Next question. for some reason, app size in cloud is much bigger than enterprise one. Do you know why it could be happening? That's interesting. So it sounds like the same app on-prem and in the cloud, but it's taking up more space in the cloud. I can say that one advantage to being on Qlik Cloud is you don't have to worry so much about the architecture side, that it is a bit dynamic and will provide the resources necessary to handle larger apps within limitations, of course, but it's not such a headache anymore. But as far as why,
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. Sorry.
I have seen that too, but the why I cannot answer yet. I have seen that it sometimes increase even like 4 times the size than what you would have as a thumbprint on-prem.
but in those situations that you've seen, Seb, is that a problem? Or I mean, I suppose it always could be.
Of course, if it touched the space where you would need enhanced capacity to open up the app, then it is a problem.
Yeah.
Then you would have extra to open the app, which on-prem just opens fine.
Yeah, and I would also check if there's any indexing involved, because I've seen that if that is turned on the first time, that can influence the app size as well.
Okay, indexing. All right, we'll move on to the next question. After upgrading, we noticed that the log collector and on-demand app services are grayed out in the QMC. Any idea why? This is after an upgrade of their on-prem, I'm assuming.
I mean, typically when something is grayed out inside of the QMC, that would indicate that the user doesn't have the rights to see that location. But as far as upgrading directly to a newer version and those being grayed out and using the same user.
So saying if you're still root admin, it should not happen, then that's the time when you come to us in support and we can figure it out together.
Yeah, I was just thinking we need a little more detail there about what version from and what version to, and yeah, maybe there were some other factors involved there as well.
But yeah, typically if there's any section that's grayed out inside of the QMC, that's typically permission related, and in the security rules.
Okay.
And that typically wouldn't happen after after you move the database, because everything inside QMC should be equal. Could indicate that there's a potential bigger issue behind.
All right. Next question.
Oh, just a follow up.
Sure.
I'm not 100% sure on this, but I was just reading something where it said that on Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows, the reported size is the size on disk, but in SaaS, the reported size is the size of the app in memory.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's actually what's in RAM as that's reported in cloud.
I think that's why it might show as a larger size, because it's showing the size in memory, not the size on disk. But I would want to verify that 100%, but that's what I was just reading on something on that.
Nice. That's great. Thank you. Getting this error after migration, the remote certificate is invalid according to the validation procedure. What should we check regarding that error? Anybody familiar with error messages? I always just Googled them, so I don't know if you guys know. But it's regarding certificates.
The remote certificate is invalid according to.
Could it be like the key wasn't included? If it's invalid?
Your certificate is expired, you have a wrong host name, you have no trusted authority for that certificate in your trusted root line, or it simply doesn't match the server name you called it with. So those are a couple of options for that kind of error message.
Would you recommend they just re-export their certificates?
Yeah,
I would regenerate new ones.
Yeah,
if you're migrating to a new server name.
Yeah, if it's the internal ones, if it is the third party you try to map to a proxy, for example, and they suddenly don't match, then just open them up in the MMC console after you have imported them and check what alternative subject names you have on the certificate to see if they support whatever URL the entry point was to your system.
Great. And it looks like the last question today, when trying to export my certificates, the PFX format is not a selectable option. It's grayed out. Any idea why?
And that's a very easy to answer question. If you don't have a private key attached on your certificate, or the private key is not exportable when it got imported, then you won't be able to do a PFX certificate, which is basically exporting both the key and the certificate. You can then only export the certificate, and that limits you to CER and P7B as an option in the export window.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for these great questions. Thank you so much to our panel for today, and thank you all for attending. We hope you enjoyed it and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.